The blood on her dress had dried to a rust-brown stain by the time she collapsed against Nathan Sawyer's door, her knuckles barely making a sound as she tried to knock one last time before darkness claimed her. Nathan had been cleaning his rifle when he heard the thump against his front door, a sound too deliberate to be the wind but too weak to be a proper knock. He lived on the outskirts of Jordan Valley, Oregon, where visitors were rare and usually unwelcome. It was late summer in 1878, and the heat still clung to everything despite the sun beginning its descent toward the horizon. He set the rifle down carefully and moved toward the door with the caution of a man who had learned that surprises in this territory were seldom pleasant. When he opened the door, she fell backward into his arms, her weight surprisingly light despite her height. Nathan caught her instinctively, his hands gripping her shoulders as he steadied both of them. Her dark blonde hair was matted with dust and sweat, her face pale beneath the grime of hard travel. The blood on her dress made his jaw tighten, though a quick assessment told him it likely was not all hers. Miss, can you hear me?" He lowered her gently to the floor just inside the doorway, checking for a pulse at her neck. It was there, steady but weak. Her breathing was shallow but regular. He scanned the horizon quickly before pulling her fully inside and shutting the door. If someone was chasing her, he did not want to be caught unaware. Nathan carried her to his bed, the only one in the small ranch house he had built with his own hands 3 years ago. He was 26 years old and had chosen this isolated spot precisely because he valued his solitude. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, and that suited him fine. He had come west from Missouri after the war, looking for space to breathe and land to call his own. He raised horses, good ones, and made a decent living selling them to the army and to ranchers who knew quality when they saw it. But now there was a woman bleeding in his bed, and solitude was the last thing he had. He fetched water and clean cloths, working methodically to assess her injuries. The blood on her dress was mostly from a gash on her arm, deep but clean. He could stitch it. There were bruises forming on her ribs, visible through the torn fabric of her bodice, and her hands were raw and blistered. She had been riding hard, probably for days. There was also a swollen knot on the side of her head, half hidden by her hair, which explained her unconscious state. Nathan worked quietly, cleaning the wound on her arm with steady hands. He had learned field medicine during the war, patching up soldiers who would have died otherwise. The skills had stayed with him, though he had hoped never to use them again. He stitched the gash with careful precision, noting the way she whimpered but did not wake. When he finished, he bandaged her arm and covered her with a quilt his mother had made before she died. Then he sat in the chair by the bed and waited. She woke near midnight, gasping and flailing as though fighting off an attacker. Nathan caught her wrists gently but firmly, keeping her from tearing open her stitches. "Easy now. You are safe. Nobody is going to hurt you." Her eyes were wild, unfocused, the color of storm clouds in the lamplight. It took several seconds for her to register where she was to see him clearly. When she did, she stopped struggling but did not relax. "Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "My ranch outside Jordan Valley, Oregon Territory. You collapsed at my door about 6 hours ago." He released her wrist slowly, showing her his empty hands. "My name is Nathan Sawyer. You are safe here." She stared at him, searching his face for something. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her because she sagged back against the pillows, exhaustion reclaiming her features. "Thank you," she managed. "I did not think I would make it." "Make it from where?" She closed her eyes. "Idaho, near Boise." Nathan calculated the distance in his head, nearly 100 miles of rough terrain. "That is a long ride for someone in your condition." "I did not have a choice." She opened her eyes again, and he saw the fear still lurking there beneath the fatigue. They killed my father, my brother. They would have killed me too if I had not run. His jaw tightened. Who? Men who wanted our land. We had a good claim, water rights to a creek that ran through the property. They tried to buy it, but Papa would not sell, so they came in the night with torches and guns. Her voice broke, but she forced the words out anyway. Papa told me to run. He and Thomas held them off while I got to the horses. I heard the shots as I rode away. Nathan poured her water from the pitcher on the bedside table, helping her sit up enough to drink. She drank greedily, water running down her chin. When she finished, she looked at him with those gray eyes that seemed to see straight through him. "I am Hannah Greene," she said, "and I have nowhere else to go." The words hung between them, heavy with implications. Nathan had lived alone for 3 years, answering to no one, responsible for no one. He had chosen this life deliberately, craving the peace that came with isolation after years of war and chaos. But he could not turn her away. That much was certain from the moment he saw her blood on his doorstep. "You can stay here until you are healed," he said finally. "Then we will figure out what comes next." Relief flooded her face, followed quickly by tears she tried to blink away. "I can work. I can earn my keep. I am strong. I can help with the horses, with cooking, whatever you need. Right now, what you need is rest. We can talk about the rest tomorrow." She nodded, already drifting back toward sleep. Nathan watched her for a moment longer, then retreated to the main room of the house. He built up the fire even though the night was warm, needing something to do with his hands. Then he settled into his chair with his rifle across his lap, and prepared for a long night of keeping watch. If the men who killed her family came looking for her, they would find her over his dead body. The days that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm. Hannah's injuries kept her bedridden for the first 3 days, and Nathan found himself in the unfamiliar role of caretaker. He made her soup and changed her bandages, brought her books from his small collection to pass the time. She slept more than she was awake those first days, her body demanding rest to heal. But by the 4th day, she was restless, insisting on getting up despite his protests. He helped her to the main room where she could sit in the comfortable chair by the window and watch him work. She was still weak, moving carefully to protect her bruised ribs, but there was determination in the set of her jaw that told him arguing would be pointless. "Tell me about this place," she said, watching him prepare dinner. It was a simple meal, beans and cornbread, but he had learned to cook well enough to keep himself fed. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. How long have you been here? Where did you come from? Why did you choose Jordan Valley?" He glanced at her, surprised by her directness. Most people tiptoed around personal questions out here, respecting the unspoken rule that everyone had a past they might not want to discuss. "I came west in '75, after the war ended, and I finished my service," he said, stirring the beans. "I wanted land, space to breathe. I had saved my pay, enough to buy horses to start breeding. This valley had good grass, water, and not too many people. Seemed like the right place." "Do you like it, being alone?" He considered the question. "I did. It was peaceful after years of noise and chaos." "Did?" She caught the past tense immediately. He met her eyes across the room. "Having company is not as terrible as I thought it might be." A smile tugged at her lips, the first real one he had seen from her. It transformed her face, softening the fear and grief that had marked her features since she woke. She was beautiful, he realized with some surprise. Not in the delicate way of town women, but in a way that spoke of strength and resilience. "Tell me about you," he said, surprising himself. "What was your life like in Idaho?" The smile faded, but she did not look away. "We had a small ranch, just Papa and Thomas and me, after Mama died 5 years ago. We raised cattle mostly, some chickens. It was hard work but good work. Thomas was going to bring home a wife next spring. He had been courting Sarah Miller for 2 years. Her voice caught. Now he never will. Nathan abandoned the stove and crossed to her, kneeling beside her chair. I am sorry for your loss. No one should have to go through what you went through. She looked down at him, tears swimming in her gray eyes but not falling. Why are you being so kind to me? You do not know me. I could be anyone. You are someone who needed help and I had it to give. That is enough. She reached out tentatively and touched his face, her fingertips light against his bearded jaw. The gesture was intimate, unexpected, and Nathan found himself frozen, caught between pulling away and leaning into her touch. You are a good man, Nathan Sawyer, she whispered. He covered her hand with his, holding it against his face for just a moment before gently pulling it away. The beans are burning, he said, his voice rough. She laughed, a real laugh that filled the small house with unexpected warmth. Then you better rescue them before we both starve. He returned to the stove, but something had shifted between them in that moment. The air felt charged, full of possibilities neither of them was quite ready to name. As the days turned into weeks, Hannah grew stronger. She began helping around the ranch despite Nathan's protests, insisting that sitting idle made her feel useless. She started with small tasks, feeding the chickens and gathering eggs, preparing meals while he worked with the horses. But soon she was doing more, mending fences, mucking stalls, even helping him break a particularly stubborn 2-year-old gelding. Nathan watched her work with growing admiration. She was skilled with horses, her touch gentle but firm, her instincts sound. When he mentioned it, she smiled. Papa taught me everything he knew. He said a woman who could handle horses would never want for work or respect. The grief was still there in her voice when she mentioned her father, but it was softer now, mixed with fondness rather than raw pain. Your father was a wise man. They were in the corral together, taking a break from working the gelding. The sun was high overhead, the August heat making them both seek the shade of the fence line. Hannah had rolled up her sleeves, and Nathan could see the pink scar on her arm where he had stitched her wound. It was healing cleanly, no sign of infection. Nathan, she said suddenly, turning to face him. Can I ask you something personal? You can ask. I might not answer, she smiled at that. Fair enough. Were you at the war? You mentioned service. His jaw tightened automatically. It was not a topic he enjoyed, but he had opened the door by mentioning it. Yes, I enlisted in '62, was discharged in '65. I was at Shiloh, Vicksburg, and the Atlanta campaign. That must have been terrible. It was. He did not elaborate, and she did not press, for which he was grateful. Is that why you came here? To get away from it? Partly. The war showed me that life is short and often brutal. I decided I wanted to spend whatever time I had living on my own terms, in a place where I could see for miles in every direction, and know what was coming. But you cannot always know what is coming, Hannah said softly. I certainly did not know I would lose everything and end up here. He looked at her, really looked at her, seeing not just the capable woman who had proven herself invaluable around the ranch, but the person beneath. Someone who had survived horror and kept going, who found strength even in grief. Do you regret it, ending up here? She held his gaze, her gray eyes serious. No, not even for a moment. Something in the way she said it made his heart beat faster. Nathan had spent 3 years telling himself he did not need companionship, that his life was full enough with his horses and his land. But Hannah had shown him what he had been missing. The warmth of shared meals and conversation. The satisfaction of working alongside someone who understood the rhythm of ranch life. The simple comfort of not being alone, and if he was honest with himself, it was more than that. He found himself watching for her smile, listening for her laugh. He noticed the way the sun caught gold highlights in her hair, the graceful way she moved despite her injuries. He thought about her last thing before sleeping and first thing upon waking. He was falling in love with her, and the realization terrified him. The summer heat began to ease as September arrived, bringing cooler nights and the promise of autumn. Nathan had been teaching Hannah to shoot, reasoning that a woman alone in this territory needed to know how to defend herself. She was a quick learner, her aim improving with each session. They were out behind the house one afternoon, Hannah practicing with his spare rifle while he watched and offered corrections. She had just hit the target dead center when they heard horses approaching. Nathan tensed immediately, his hand going to the pistol at his hip. Visitors were still rare, and his mind went immediately to the men who had killed Hannah's family. But when the riders came into view, he relaxed slightly. It was Ben Morrison, the nearest neighbor, along with his wife Clara. "Nathan," Ben called out, raising his hand in greeting. "Saw smoke from your chimney and thought we would ride over, see how you are doing." Nathan returned the wave, acutely aware of Hannah beside him. He had been so isolated that he had not considered how it might look, him living alone with a single woman. Not that he cared much about gossip, but he cared about Hannah's reputation. Ben and Clara dismounted, and Clara's eyes went immediately to Hannah with unconcealed curiosity. She was a plump woman in her 40s, kind-faced and direct in the way of frontier wives. "Well now, this is a surprise," Clara said, smiling. "Nathan, are you going to introduce us to your companion?" "This is Hannah Greene," Nathan said carefully. "She arrived a few weeks ago in need of shelter and help. Hannah, this is Ben and Clara Morrison. They have a ranch about 5 miles east." Hannah stepped forward, offering her hand to Clara. "It is nice to meet you both. Nathan has been very kind, taking me in when I had nowhere else to go." Clara shook her hand warmly, but her eyes were sharp, taking in every detail. "Where do you come from, dear?" "Idaho originally, near Boise. My family had a ranch there." Hannah's voice was steady, but Nathan heard the pain underneath. "Had," Clara caught the past tense. Hannah glanced at Nathan, and he gave her a small nod of encouragement. She took a breath and told them the story, the same one she had told him that first night. Clara's expression shifted from curiosity to sympathy, and Ben's face darkened with anger. "That is terrible," Clara said, reaching out to grip Hannah's arm gently. "You poor thing, going through all that and having to flee so far. Thank God you found Nathan." "Yes," Hannah said softly, her eyes finding his. "Thank God." They invited the Morrisons in for coffee, and Clara helped Hannah prepare it while the men talked outside. Nathan watched through the window as Clara chatted with Hannah, seeing her smile and respond with growing ease. When they came back out, Clara looked significantly more relaxed. "Hannah tells me she has been helping you with the horses," Clara said to Nathan. "That is good work for a woman with her skills." "She is very capable," Nathan agreed. "I am sure she is." Clara exchanged a look with her husband that Nathan could not quite read. "Nathan, might I have a word?" Woman to man, so to speak. Hannah immediately excused herself to check on something in the barn, giving them privacy. When she was out of earshot, Clara fixed Nathan with a look that reminded him uncomfortably of his mother. "That girl is in love with you," Clara said bluntly. Nathan felt heat rise in his cheeks. "Madam, I do not think—" "Oh, hush. I have eyes and I know what I see. The question is, how do you feel about her?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "She has been through hell. She needed safety and shelter, not me taking advantage. Taking advantage would be doing something she did not want," Clara interrupted. "But if the feeling is mutual, that is different. Is it mutual, Nathan?" He looked toward the barn where Hannah had disappeared. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "God help me, yes." Clara smiled, satisfied. Good. Then do not be a fool about it. Life is too short and too hard out here to waste time pretending you do not care about someone when you do. It has only been a few weeks. That is too soon to know nonsense. Ben and I knew within 3 days of meeting that we would marry. We have been together 22 years now. When you know, you know, Ben laughed. She is right, Nathan. She usually is, which is why I stopped arguing with her years ago. Clara swatted his arm playfully, then turned back to Nathan. Just think about it, and think about what people will say if she keeps living here without proper arrangement. I do not care myself, but others might not be so understanding. I would never do anything to harm her reputation. I know that, but you might want to consider making things proper. That is all I am saying. Clara patted his arm. Now we should be heading back, but you two should come for dinner next week. I want to get to know Hannah better, and she could probably use some female company. After they left, Hannah emerged from the barn. They seem nice. They are good people. Clara just gave me an earful about propriety and reputation. Hannah's eyes widened. Oh, I did not think about how it might look me staying here. I can leave, I can no. The word came out harder than he intended. He softened his tone. I do not want you to leave. Nathan, Hannah, we need to talk. Really talk. He took her hand, leading her to the porch steps where they sat side by side, looking out over the land he had claimed as his own. I know you have been through hell, he started. I know it has only been a few weeks, and that might be too soon. But Clara said something that made me realize I am being a coward by not being honest with you. Hannah's hand tightened on his. Honest about what? He turned to face her, taking both of her hands in his. I care about you, Hannah, more than I have cared about anyone in a very long time. You have brought life back to this place to me. I think about you constantly. I find excuses to be near you, and when I imagine my future now, I cannot picture it without you in it. Her breath caught, her gray eyes searching his face. Nathan, I feel the same way. I have been trying to tell myself it is just gratitude, that I am confused because you saved my life. But it is more than that, so much more. You are sure? Because if this is just, she kissed him, cutting off his words. It was gentle at first, tentative, but when he responded, pulling her closer, it deepened into something that spoke of need and longing and promises yet to be made. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he said. I know it is fast, but marry me anyway. Build this life with me. Let me spend every day proving that you are safe and loved and home. Tears spilled down Hannah's cheeks, but she was smiling. Yes, God, yes, Nathan, I will marry you. He kissed her again, softer this time, sealing the promise between them. When they broke apart, she laughed through her tears. Clara is going to say she told you so, undoubtedly, and she will be insufferably smug about it. I do not care. Hannah cupped his face in her hands. I do not care about anything except this, us. I came here running from death, and I found life. I found you. I found you too, Nathan said, and I am never letting you go. They sat together as the sun set, planning their future with the kind of hope that only comes from surviving darkness and finding light on the other side. They were married 3 weeks later in Jordan Valley, with Ben and Clara standing as witnesses and half the town in attendance, despite the couple being relative strangers. News traveled fast in small communities, and the story of the woman who had ridden 100 miles to escape death only to find love had captured people's imaginations. Hannah wore a simple dress that Clara had helped her sew, pale blue cotton that matched the autumn sky. Nathan wore his best clothes, clean-shaven for the first time since Hannah had known him, which made her laugh when she saw him. You look so different without the beard, she said, reaching up to touch his smooth jaw. Is that good or bad? Just different. I would love you either way. The ceremony was short, performed by the circuit preacher who came through once a month. Nathan spoke his vows in a steady voice, promising to love and protect Hannah for all his days. Hannah's voice shook with emotion as she promised the same, but her eyes never left his. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan kissed her with a tenderness that made several of the watching women sigh. It was a kiss that spoke of promise and commitment, of two people choosing each other despite all the reasons they might not. The town had prepared a celebration dinner, long tables set up outside the general store laden with food that people had contributed. There was music and dancing, and Hannah found herself swept into the community with a warmth that made her chest tight with gratitude. These people did not know her, but they welcomed her anyway, offering congratulations and advice and friendship. Late in the evening, Clara pulled her aside. "You look happy, dear." "I am. Happier than I ever thought I could be again." "Good. You deserve it after what you have been through." Clara paused. "Have you thought about what comes next? About children?" Hannah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "We have not really discussed it yet." "Well, you should. Nathan strikes me as the kind of man who would be a good father, and you seem like you would be a wonderful mother. But it is important to be on the same page about these things." "We will talk about it," Hannah promised. "Right now I just want to enjoy being his wife." Clara smiled. "That is a fine way to start." They left the celebration as the moon rose, riding back to the ranch together on Nathan's best horse. Hannah sat in front of him, leaning back against his chest, his arms around her as he guided the horse through the darkness. It felt safe and right, like coming home after a long journey. When they arrived at the ranch, Nathan dismounted first and lifted her down, but instead of setting her on her feet, he carried her to the door. "What are you doing?" she asked, laughing. "I am told it is traditional to carry one's bride over the threshold." "Who told you that, Clara?" She had many opinions about what I should and should not do tonight. Hannah laughed harder. "I am sure she did." He carried her inside and set her gently on her feet in front of the fireplace. The house was dark except for the moonlight streaming through the windows, painting everything in silver. Nathan lit a lamp, filling the room with golden warmth. "Are you nervous?" he asked softly. "A little," she admitted. "But not in a bad way, are you?" "Terrified," he said, which surprised a laugh from her. "I want this to be good for you, Hannah. I want to do right by you." She stepped closer, placing her hands on his chest. "Then just love me. That is all I need." He did, with a gentleness that brought tears to her eyes. They learned each other slowly, carefully, mapping the terrain of intimacy with patience and care. Nathan was attentive to every response, every sigh and shiver, making sure she was comfortable and willing at every step. And Hannah surprised herself with her own boldness, reaching for him with a confidence born of trust and desire. Afterward, they lay tangled together in his bed, their bed now, watching shadows dance across the ceiling. "What are you thinking?" Hannah asked, tracing patterns on his bare chest. "That I am the luckiest man alive, that I cannot believe you chose me. It was an easy choice." She propped herself up on one elbow to look down at him. "Nathan, Clara asked me tonight about children, about what we want for the future. What did you tell her?" "That we had not discussed it yet, but I want to discuss it now with you. Do you want children?" He reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "I do. I never let myself think about it much before because I was alone and it seemed like something that would never happen. But now, with you, I can imagine it. Sons and daughters running around the ranch, learning to ride, learning to work the land." He paused. "What about you? Is that something you want?" "Yes. I always imagined having a family before everything happened, and now with you I can imagine it again. A real home, with children and love and all the things that make life worth living." "Then that is what we will build," Nathan said, pulling her down for a kiss. Together. The winter that followed their marriage was mild by Oregon standards, but it still brought challenges. Snow fell in January, covering the ranch in white silence, and Nathan taught Hannah how to manage the horses in cold weather, how to break ice on the water troughs, and make sure the animals had enough feed to stay warm. They fell into an easy partnership, dividing the work according to their strengths. Nathan handled the heavy labor and the horse trading, riding into town or to neighboring ranches to conduct business. Hannah managed the household and helped with the daily care of the animals, her skill with horses proving invaluable as Nathan's breeding program expanded. But the winter also brought nightmares. Hannah would wake gasping, tears on her face, the memories of that terrible night in Idaho still fresh despite the months that had passed. Nathan learned to recognize the signs, the way her breathing would change in sleep, the small whimpers that preceded the full terror. He would wake her gently, holding her until the fear passed, reminding her that she was safe, that she was home. "I am sorry," she said one night after a particularly bad episode. "I do not mean to keep waking you." "Never apologize for that," Nathan said firmly. "You have been through trauma, Hannah. That does not just disappear because we want it to. But I am here, and I will hold you through every nightmare until they stop. What if they never stop? Then I will hold you forever. I am not going anywhere." She buried her face against his chest, breathing in the scent of him that had become synonymous with safety. "I love you so much. I love you too, more than I can say." Spring arrived in a rush of green and wildflowers, and with it came good news from several fronts. Nathan sold 4 horses to the Army at Fort Boise for an excellent price, money that would keep them comfortable through the next year. And Hannah discovered she was pregnant. She told him one evening after dinner, her hands shaking slightly as she spoke the words, "I think I am with child." "I am almost certain." Nathan froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Then a grin split his face so wide it made her laugh. He crossed to her in 2 strides, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around despite her laughing protests. "Really? You are sure?" "As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor, but all the signs are there." He set her down carefully, suddenly worried. "Are you all right? Do you feel well? Should you be doing the work you have been doing, Nathan? I am pregnant, not fragile." "Women have babies all the time while still doing their regular work. I will be fine." But he fussed over her anyway, insisting she rest more, taking on tasks she normally handled. It was simultaneously endearing and frustrating, and Hannah finally had to sit him down and have a serious talk about balance. "I appreciate your concern," she said, taking his hands. "But you need to trust that I know my own body and my own limits. I promise to be careful to not overdo it. But I also need to stay active and useful. Otherwise, I will go mad sitting around for the next 6 months. I just want you and the baby to be safe. We will be, but wrapping me in cotton wool is not going to ensure that. Living our lives, working together like we always have, that is what will keep us sane and happy. Can you trust me on this?" he sighed. "Yes, I am sorry, I am just terrified of something going wrong." "So am I, but we cannot live in fear, we just have to do our best and trust the rest to God." They rode into Jordan Valley the next week to see the doctor and confirm the pregnancy officially. Doc Wilson was an older man with kind eyes and steady hands, and he examined Hannah with professional efficiency before declaring her in excellent health and estimating the baby would arrive in early November. "You are young and strong," he told them. "I see no reason to expect complications. But come see me monthly so I can monitor your progress." They stopped by the Morrison Ranch on the way home to share the news. Clara shrieked with delight, hugging Hannah hard enough to make her laugh. "A baby! Oh, that is wonderful news. Your first of many, I hope. Let us get through this one first, Hannah said, but she was smiling. You want a boy or a girl? Ben asked Nathan. Healthy, Nathan said immediately. That is all that matters. But privately, lying in bed that night with his hand on Hannah's still flat stomach, he told her the truth. I will love any child we have equally, but I hope our first is a boy, a son to carry on the ranch, to work beside me as he grows. What if it is a girl? Then I will teach her everything I would teach a son, and she will be the finest horsewoman in Oregon Territory. Hannah laughed. Either way, this child will be loved beyond measure. Yes, Nathan agreed, kissing her, without question. The summer brought heat and hard work. They added to the herd, bought 3 new mares from a rancher in Idaho who was selling out and moving to California. Hannah's pregnancy progressed normally, her belly swelling with the life inside her. She continued working as long as she could, only stopping the heavy labor when she became too ungainly to move easily. Nathan found himself watching her constantly, marveling at the changes in her body, at the way she would rest her hand on her stomach when the baby moved. Sometimes in the evening they would sit together and feel the kicks and rolls, laughing at the particularly vigorous movements. This child is already spirited, Hannah said one night, wincing as a strong kick landed against her ribs. Takes after his mother, Nathan said, his hand joining hers on her belly. Or her mother, he agreed. August brought an unexpected visitor. Nathan was working with a yearling colt when a rider approached, and something about the man's posture made him go on alert. He moved to intercept before the stranger could reach the house where Hannah was resting. "Can I help you?" Nathan called out, his hand near his pistol. The man reined in, raising his hands to show they were empty. He was middle-aged, weathered, with the look of someone who had spent his life outdoors. Looking for a woman named Hannah Greene. Was told she might be here. Nathan's expression hardened. Who is asking? Name is James Morgan. I was a friend of her father's, Samuel. Heard what happened to him and his boy, wanted to find his daughter, make sure she was all right. You have proof of who you are. The man reached slowly into his pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. Nathan took it carefully, examining the image. It showed a younger version of the man before him standing next to another man who had Hannah's eyes and smile. On the back was written, Jim and Samuel Boise, 1873. Wait here, Nathan said, handing back the photograph. He went into the house where Hannah was folding laundry. Someone is here asking for you, claims to be James Morgan, friend of your father's. Hannah's eyes widened. Uncle Jim, Papa's friend from the mine, you know him. Yes, he and Papa were close before we moved to the ranch. I have not seen him in years, but Papa mentioned him in letters. She moved toward the door, Nathan following protectively. When she saw the rider, her face broke into a smile. Uncle Jim. The man's stern expression softened into something like relief. Hannah, girl, thank God. When I heard what happened, I feared the worst. She hurried out to him as he dismounted, and they embraced carefully, Nathan noting how the man was mindful of her pregnant state. He relaxed fractionally but stayed alert. Come inside, Hannah said. Tell me everything. How did you find me? Over coffee. James Morgan explained that he had been working a claim further north when word reached him about the attack on the Greene Ranch. He had ridden to Idaho immediately, only to find the ranch burned and abandoned, Samuel and Thomas buried in hastily dug graves. The local law is useless, he said bitterly. The men who did it have money and connections. Nobody is willing to stand up to them. That is why I ran, Hannah said. I knew if I stayed I would end up dead too. You did the right thing. James looked at Nathan. And you are the man who took her in, Nathan Sawyer. And yes, I found her at my door. We are married now. James studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Samuel would be grateful knowing his daughter found someone to care for her, and a child on the way too. He smiled at Hannah. Your father would have been so proud. Tears filled Hannah's eyes. I miss him. Every day. I know, girl, I know. James reached across to squeeze her hand. But he would be glad knowing you survived, that you built a new life. He stayed for dinner, sharing stories about Samuel that made Hannah laugh and cry in equal measure. It was healing, Nathan realized, for her to talk with someone who had known her father, who could help keep his memory alive. As James prepared to leave the next morning, he pulled Nathan aside. Take care of her. She has been through hell, but she is strong. She will make you a good wife and mother to your children. I know. I will spend every day of my life making sure she is safe and happy. Good man. James shook his hand firmly. If you ever need anything, you send word. I may not be blood, but Hannah is family to me. After he left, Hannah leaned against Nathan, watching the dust settle on the road. That was good seeing him, painful but good. Your father had a good friend in him, he did, and I have a good husband in you. She turned to kiss him. I am very lucky. We both are. The baby arrived on a cold November night in 1879, 2 weeks earlier than the doctor had predicted. Hannah's labor started just after midnight, waking Nathan from a sound sleep with her grip on his arm. It is time, she said, her voice tight with pain and excitement. Nathan bolted upright, suddenly wide awake. They had prepared for this moment, had everything ready. But now that it was here, he felt paralyzed with fear. Nathan, Hannah said more firmly, go get Clara. That snapped him into action. He dressed faster than he ever had in his life, saddled a horse, and rode through the darkness to the Morrison ranch. He pounded on their door until Ben appeared, groggy and confused. It is Hannah. The baby is coming. That was all Clara needed to hear. She was dressed and ready in minutes, her bag packed with supplies she had prepared weeks ago. They rode back together through the darkness, Nathan pushing the pace despite Clara's protests. When they arrived, they found Hannah pacing the bedroom, one hand on her back. She smiled when she saw Clara, relief clear on her face. Thank God. This is moving faster than I expected. Clara took charge immediately, sending Nathan to boil water and gather clean linens. He did as instructed, grateful to have tasks to occupy his hands even as his mind raced with worry. The hours that followed were the longest of Nathan's life. He could hear Hannah's cries of pain through the closed door, and each one felt like a knife in his heart. Ben had ridden over to keep him company, preventing him from doing something foolish like bursting in to check on her. She is strong, Ben said for the 10th time. Clara has delivered dozens of babies. Hannah will be fine. You do not know that. No, but worrying yourself sick will not change anything. Have faith. Just before dawn, a new sound joined Hannah's cries, a baby's wail, strong and healthy. Nathan was on his feet instantly, moving toward the bedroom door. It opened before he reached it, and Clara emerged, smiling. You have a son, a big healthy boy, and Hannah is fine, tired but fine. The relief was so intense Nathan felt his knees go weak. Can I see them? Give me 5 minutes to get them settled, then come in. Those 5 minutes felt like hours. When Clara finally opened the door and beckoned him in, Nathan entered the room like a man approaching something sacred. Hannah was propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a bundle wrapped in blankets. Her face was pale and damp with sweat, but her smile was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Come meet your son, she said softly. Nathan crossed to the bed and looked down at the tiny face peeking from the blankets. The baby was red and wrinkled, his eyes squeezed shut, but Nathan felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. He is perfect, he whispered, he is, and he has your chin. Hannah laughed softly. Would you like to hold him? Nathan had held newborn foals, had helped calves stand on shaky legs, but nothing had prepared him for the weight of his own son in his arms. The baby was so small, so fragile, and yet Nathan could feel the life in him, the potential for everything this child would become. "What should we name him?" he asked, unable to take his eyes off his son's face. "I was thinking Thomas after my brother, if that is all right with you." Nathan looked up at her, seeing the hope and grief mingled in her expression. "Thomas Sawyer. Yes, that is perfect." The baby chose that moment to open his eyes, dark blue like all newborns, and seemed to look directly at his father. Nathan felt tears sting his eyes. "Hello, Thomas. I am your papa, and I promise to love you and protect you every day of your life." Hannah reached out to touch his arm, completing the circle of their new family. "We made something beautiful," she whispered. "We did," Nathan agreed. "We really did." The months after Thomas's birth were a blur of sleepless nights and new routines. Nathan took on more of the ranch work to give Hannah time to recover and bond with the baby, but he insisted on helping with Thomas whenever he could. He changed diapers and walked the floor with a colicky infant at 2 in the morning, learning the particular cry that meant hunger versus tired versus just wanting to be held. Watching Nathan with their son made Hannah fall in love with him all over again. He was patient and gentle, singing off key lullabies and talking to Thomas about horses and ranching as if the baby could understand every word. "You are going to be a fine rancher someday," Nathan told Thomas one evening, holding him against his shoulder while Hannah prepared dinner. "You will learn to ride and rope, to judge good horseflesh and treat animals with respect. And your mama and I will teach you to be kind and honest, to stand up for what is right." "You do know he cannot understand you yet," Hannah said, amused. "Probably not, but it is never too early to start." By the time spring arrived, they had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Thomas was sleeping through the night more often, and Hannah felt like herself again, ready to resume her work with the horses. Clara came to visit regularly, teaching Hannah everything she knew about motherhood while also providing adult conversation and friendship. The ranch was thriving too. Nathan's reputation for breeding quality horses had spread, and buyers came from as far as Idaho and California to purchase his stock. The money was good, better than Nathan had dared hope when he first started his breeding program. One evening in late April, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset while Thomas dozed in Hannah's arms, Nathan broached a subject they had discussed before. "I want to expand the ranch, buy more land, increase the herd. What do you think?" Hannah considered it. "How much land?" "There is a section adjacent to ours coming up for sale. Good grazing, water access. It would nearly double our range. Can we afford it? With the money from this year's sales, yes. It would be tight for a while, but I think it is worth it. We could build something really substantial here, something to pass on to Thomas and any other children we might have." Hannah looked down at their son, then out at the land that had become her home. A year ago she had arrived here with nothing but the clothes on her back and a heart full of grief. Now she had a husband she loved, a son she adored, and a future full of possibility. "Let us do it," she said. "Let us build something that will last." Nathan leaned over to kiss her, careful not to disturb Thomas. "Thank you for taking a chance on this life. On me. Thank you for opening your door to a desperate woman covered in blood and dust." He laughed. "You know, I sometimes think about that night. What might have happened if I had not heard you knock, or if I had been away from the ranch. But you were there, and you did hear me. That is all that matters. Fate, maybe, or divine intervention, or just luck. Whatever it was, I am grateful." They bought the land that summer, and with it came more work. Nathan hired 2 ranch hands to help with the increased workload, young men from town who were eager to learn the horse business. Hannah managed them with the same competence she brought to everything, earning their respect through knowledge and fairness rather than demanding it. Thomas grew from an infant into a curious toddler, learning to walk and babble and get into everything. Nathan built him a small rocking horse, and the boy would spend hours riding it, shrieking with delight. They talked about having more children, deciding to let it happen naturally rather than planning too carefully. Their second child, a daughter they named Grace, arrived in the spring of 1882 when Thomas was 2.5. She was smaller than her brother had been, with Hannah's gray eyes and a surprisingly loud cry for such a tiny thing. Thomas was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything from diaper changes to feeding times. Gentle, Nathan reminded him constantly. Baby Grace is very small. We must be gentle. Thomas would nod seriously and pat Grace's head with exaggerated care, making both parents smile. Life settled into a new rhythm with 2 children. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Nathan's horses were now known throughout the territory as some of the finest available, and he had more buyers than he could supply. They added buildings to the ranch, a proper barn with multiple stalls, a chicken coop, storage sheds. The house itself grew too, with Nathan adding a second story that gave them 3 bedrooms instead of 1. Thomas got his own room, filled with toys Nathan carved and a real bed instead of a cradle. Grace would move into the second bedroom when she was older, but for now she slept in her parents' room where Hannah could nurse her during the night. One evening in late 1883, after the children were asleep, and they had a rare moment of quiet, Hannah brought up something that had been on her mind. "Nathan, I want to go back to Idaho." He looked at her in surprise. "Why? Not to stay, just to visit. I want to see Papa's and Thomas's graves, pay my respects properly. I want to see what happened to the ranch, if anything. I need closure, I think." Nathan was quiet for a moment, considering. "It might not be safe. The men who attacked your family, that was 5 years ago, and I would not go alone. You would be with me." "What about Thomas and Grace?" Clara offered to watch them for a few days. "She mentioned it last week when I saw her in town." "I think she suspected I might want to make this trip someday." He reached for her hand. "If this is something you need to do, then we will do it. But we do it carefully and we do not take unnecessary risks." "Agreed." They made the journey in early autumn when the weather was still good. The ride to Idaho took 3 days, following familiar trails that Hannah remembered from her desperate flight years before. It was strange seeing these places in daylight, under peaceful circumstances. The Greene ranch was still there, or what remained of it. The house was a burned-out shell, the barn collapsed. But someone had maintained the graves, Nathan noted. 2 simple wooden crosses with Samuel and Thomas Greene carved into them, surrounded by a low fence to keep animals out. Hannah knelt between the graves, tears streaming down her face as she placed wildflowers she had gathered along the trail. Nathan stood back, giving her privacy for her grief. "Papa, Thomas," she said softly, "I am sorry it took me so long to come back. I want you to know I am safe now. I have a good husband and 2 beautiful children. We have a ranch in Oregon, and we are building the kind of life you would have wanted for me. I miss you both every day, but the pain is not as sharp now. I can remember the good times without being crushed by the loss." She stayed there for a long time, talking to her dead family, telling them about her life. Nathan waited patiently, his own eyes damp. He had never known Samuel or Thomas Greene, but he was grateful to them nonetheless. They had raised Hannah to be strong and capable, had taught her skills that allowed her to survive. Their sacrifice had given her the chance to escape, to live. When Hannah finally rose, she was calmer, more at peace than Nathan had seen her in years. "Thank you for bringing me here." "Of course." Did it help? Yes. I can let go now, truly let go. They are at peace, and so am I. They rode into Boise to ask about the men who had attacked the ranch. The local sheriff was new, different from the one who had been in office during the attack. When Nathan explained what they were looking for, the sheriff's expression grew grim. The Lang brothers. They ran roughshod over this area for years, taking what they wanted, but they are gone now. Carl Lang was shot in a poker game 2 years ago, and his brother Robert died of fever last winter. Their gang scattered after that. Hannah felt a strange mixture of emotions at the news, relief that they could not hurt anyone else, disappointment that there had been no real justice, but also a sense of finality that allowed her to truly close this chapter. They made the return journey to Oregon with lighter hearts. Hannah felt as if she had set down a burden she had been carrying for years. The past would always be part of her, but it no longer defined her. She was Hannah Sawyer now, wife and mother and rancher, building a future instead of mourning what had been lost. When they arrived home, Thomas and Grace ran to greet them, Thomas shrieking, "Mama, Papa," while Grace toddled after him as fast as her little legs could carry her. Hannah scooped them both into her arms, breathing in the sweet scent of her children, feeling complete. "I am home," she told Nathan, and he understood she meant it in every possible way. The years that followed were good ones, filled with the kind of simple happiness that comes from hard work and love. Thomas grew into a serious boy who followed his father everywhere, learning the ranch work with an eagerness that made Nathan proud. Grace was more spirited, always getting into mischief, keeping her mother constantly entertained and occasionally exasperated. A third child arrived in 1885, another boy they named Benjamin after Ben Morrison, who had become one of Nathan's closest friends. Ben was a happy baby who smiled at everything, bringing laughter into their home with his sunny disposition. The ranch continued to prosper. Nathan took on a partner in the horse business, a younger man named David Chen, who had come west from California and shared Nathan's eye for quality horses. The partnership allowed Nathan to spend more time with his growing family, while still maintaining the standards that had made Sawyer ranch horses so sought after. Hannah started teaching Grace to ride when the girl turned 4, just as her own father had taught her. Grace took to it immediately, proving to have a natural seat and gentle hands. Thomas was already an accomplished rider by age 7, able to handle all but the most difficult horses. One evening in the summer of 1887, Hannah and Nathan sat on their porch as they had countless times before, watching their children play in the yard. Benjamin toddled after his older siblings, determined to keep up despite being only 2. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, and the air smelled of grass and horses and home. "You ever think about how different your life might have been?" Hannah asked. "If I had not knocked on your door that night," Nathan considered the question. "Sometimes. I would probably still be alone, convinced I did not need anyone. I would have a successful ranch but an empty house. No late-night lullabies or toys scattered everywhere or children's laughter echoing off the walls. You regret it. The chaos and noise." He pulled her closer. "Not for a single second. You and our children are the best things that ever happened to me. My life did not really begin until the night I opened my door and found you there." Hannah rested her head on his shoulder, watching their children. "I was so scared that night. Hurt and lost and certain I was going to die. I knocked on your door because I saw the light and had just enough hope left to try. I never imagined I would find everything I needed inside, not just shelter and safety, but love and family and home." "We both found what we needed," Nathan said. "I just did not know I needed it until you arrived." Thomas called out to them, showing off some accomplishment or another. Nathan called back encouragement while Hannah smiled, content in a way she had never imagined possible during those dark days of flight and fear. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they called the children inside for bedtime. The evening routine was familiar and comforting. Washing faces and hands, changing into night clothes, prayers and stories and goodnight kisses. Nathan read to Thomas from a book about explorers while Hannah nursed Benjamin and sang softly to Grace until her eyes grew heavy. When all three children were finally asleep, Hannah and Nathan returned to the main room. Nathan banked the fire while Hannah tidied the children's toys, actions so routine they required no thought. Then they stood together at the window, looking out at the land they had built together. "I love you," Hannah said. "I do not say it enough, but I love you more than words can express." Nathan turned her to face him, cupping her face in his hands. "I love you too. Every day more than the day before. You are my heart, Hannah. You and our children are everything." They kissed, a kiss that still held the spark of new love even after all these years. When they finally pulled apart, Hannah smiled. "Come to bed, husband. Tomorrow will be here soon enough. Lead the way, wife." They walked hand in hand to their bedroom, grateful for the life they had built together, for the love that had grown from desperate beginnings into something strong and enduring. The seasons continued to turn, bringing both joy and challenges. In 1889, a harsh winter killed several horses and put a strain on the ranch's finances. But they weathered it together, cutting expenses and working harder, emerging in spring bruised but unbroken. Nathan taught Thomas how to help with the foaling season that year, and the boy proved to have inherited his parents' way with horses. Grace, now 7, started helping her mother with the household tasks while also continuing to develop her riding skills. She had declared her intention to be the finest horsewoman in Oregon, which made Hannah laugh and Nathan beam with pride. Benjamin, at 4 years old, was the family comedian, always finding ways to make everyone laugh. He had a gift for mimicry and would imitate the neighbors or the ranch hands with hilarious accuracy. In the spring of 1890, Hannah discovered she was pregnant again. She was 32 years old now, and this pregnancy felt different from the others, harder on her body. But the doctor assured her everything was progressing normally, just that she needed more rest. Nathan insisted she stop doing heavy work, and this time Hannah did not argue. She focused on teaching Grace and spending time with Benjamin, while Nathan and Thomas handled more of the ranch responsibilities. David Chen's partnership proved invaluable during this time, allowing Nathan to focus on family when needed. Their fourth child, a daughter they named Clara after their dear friend, arrived in December of 1890. The birth was difficult, leaving Hannah weak and exhausted. Doc Wilson told them privately that another pregnancy might be dangerous, advice they took seriously. Little Clara was tiny but healthy, with a surprisingly strong grip and lungs that worked perfectly well, as she demonstrated regularly. The older children were smitten with their baby sister. Thomas, now 11, was surprisingly gentle with the infant. Grace insisted on helping with everything, and Benjamin wanted to know when the baby would be big enough to play. Clara Morrison, for whom the baby was named, cried when she first held her tiny namesake. "What an honor," she said, tears streaming down her weathered face. "To think you would name your daughter after me. You have been like a mother to me," Hannah said. "When I arrived here with nothing, you welcomed me and taught me and loved me. This is the least I could do to show my gratitude." The two women embraced, Ben and Nathan exchanging knowing smiles. Clara Morrison had indeed become family, always there when needed, offering wisdom and support through all the ups and downs of the past 12 years. As baby Clara grew, the Sawyer household adapted to having 4 children. The house was full of noise and laughter and occasional arguments, exactly as a home should be. Nathan added another room, giving Grace her own space separate from the boys. The ranch continued to thrive. Thomas, now 12, took on more responsibility, proving himself capable beyond his years. Nathan taught him about breeding lines and how to judge conformation, sharing the knowledge that had made Sawyer Ranch horses so prized. The boy absorbed it all eagerly, already showing signs of the man he would become. In the fall of 1892, tragedy struck when Ben Morrison passed away suddenly from a heart seizure. The loss hit everyone hard, but especially Clara, who had been married to Ben for over 30 years. Nathan and Hannah brought her to stay with them for several weeks after the funeral, not wanting her to be alone in her grief. "We had so many good years," Clara said one evening, sitting with Hannah while the children played outside. "I should be grateful for that instead of mourning what I have lost." "You can be both grateful and sad," Hannah said gently. "Grief is not logical, it just is." "You know something about loss," Clara observed. "You lost your father and brother violently, suddenly, with no chance to say goodbye." "At least I got to tell Ben I loved him every single day." "Loss is loss," Hannah said. "It all hurts, just in different ways. But you have us, Clara. You will always have us." True to her word, the Sawyers ensured Clara Morrison was never alone unless she wanted to be. She maintained her own ranch with help from hired hands, but she spent several evenings a week at the Sawyer table, becoming the children's honorary grandmother. The years moved forward with the relentless pace of life. Thomas turned 15, then 16, growing tall and strong, already turning heads among the girls in town. Grace was 12, still horse-mad, still determined to be the best rider she could be. Benjamin at 9 was all mischief and charm, while little Clara toddled after everyone, trying to keep up with her older siblings. In 1895, a significant opportunity arose. The Army contacted Nathan about a large contract for horses, more than he could possibly fill alone. He and David Chen discussed it extensively before deciding to expand significantly, bringing in a third partner and doubling the size of their operation. It was a risk, but it paid off. The contract was fulfilled successfully, and Sawyer Ranch became one of the premier horse suppliers in the Oregon Territory. The money was good enough that Nathan could afford to hire more help, taking some of the physical burden off himself and allowing more time with family. That summer, Nathan took Thomas on a buying trip to California, just the two of them. It was time, he felt, for Thomas to see more of the world beyond Jordan Valley, to learn the business side of ranching. They were gone for 3 weeks, and when they returned, Thomas had grown somehow, becoming more confident and mature. "He did well," Nathan told Hannah that night. "He has good instincts, and he is not afraid to ask questions when he does not know something. He will be ready to take over the ranch someday when I am too old to manage it." "That day is a long way off," Hannah said, but she was pleased. Thomas was 17 now, nearly a man, and it was good to see him stepping into that role with Nathan's guidance. Grace, at 14, had become beautiful in a way that worried both her parents. Boys from town found excuses to ride out to the ranch, and Grace accepted their attention with the same confidence she brought to everything. Nathan, predictably, wanted to lock her in her room until she was 30. Hannah, more pragmatically, made sure Grace understood her worth and would not settle for less than genuine respect and affection. The turn of the century arrived with celebrations throughout Jordan Valley. It was 1900, the dawn of a new era, and people felt hopeful about the future. The Sawyers hosted a party at the ranch, inviting neighbors and friends to ring in the new century together. There was music and dancing, food and laughter, children running wild in the excitement of staying up past bedtime. Nathan stood on his porch, watching the celebration, feeling the weight of years in a good way. He was 48 years old now, gray threading through his dark hair, lines carved into his face by sun and wind and laughter. But he was healthy and happy, surrounded by family and friends, owner of a successful ranch that bore his name. Hannah joined him, slipping her hand into his. At 42, she was still beautiful, still strong, though time had left its mark on her too. Silver strands mingled with the gold in her hair, and there were fine lines around her eyes. But those eyes were still the same stormy gray that had captured his heart, still full of intelligence and strength. "What are you thinking?" she asked, the same question she had asked him countless times over the years. "That I am grateful. For all of this, for you, for the life we built together." He pulled her close. 22 years ago, you knocked on my door and changed everything. Best thing that ever happened to me." "Best thing that happened to both of us," she corrected, resting her head against his shoulder. "I found everything I needed inside when you opened that door. Safety, yes, but so much more. I found love and home and purpose. I found myself." They stood together, watching their children and grandchildren, yes, grandchildren now, as Thomas had married young Sarah Winters 2 years ago, and they had given Nathan and Hannah their first grandson, Samuel, named after Hannah's father. The baby was being passed around among adoring relatives, completely comfortable with all the attention. "We did well," Nathan said. "In spite of everything, we built something good here." "We did," Hannah agreed, "and it will continue long after we are gone. Thomas and Sarah will raise their children here, teach them the same values we taught Thomas. The ranch will go on." It was a comforting thought, this idea of legacy and continuance. They had built not just a successful business but a family, a dynasty that would carry their values forward. The years that followed were gentler ones. Nathan gradually turned more of the ranch management over to Thomas, who proved more than capable. Nathan still worked, still got up before dawn and spent his days with the horses he loved, but the crushing weight of responsibility had eased. Hannah, too, stepped back from the hardest work, focusing instead on her growing garden and her grandchildren. Sarah and Thomas had 2 more children, a daughter and another son, and Grace married a young lawyer from Boise who moved to Jordan Valley to practice. Benjamin, ever the charmer, courted and won the heart of the schoolteacher, and they married in 1905 in a ceremony that had half the town in tears. Only little Clara, now 15, remained unmarried, and she showed no interest in changing that status. She wanted to travel, she declared, to see more of the world than just Oregon. Nathan and Hannah supported her dreams even as they worried about their youngest daughter venturing so far. In the spring of 1908, Nathan woke with chest pain that frightened Hannah badly enough to send for the doctor immediately. Doc Wilson, now quite elderly himself, examined Nathan carefully before delivering his verdict. "Your heart is struggling, Nathan. Not an immediate crisis, but you need to take it easier. No more long days of hard physical labor. Let your sons do the heavy work." Nathan chafed at the restrictions but obeyed, not willing to risk leaving Hannah and his family prematurely. He spent more time in an advisory role, teaching his grandsons about horses, entertaining his granddaughters with stories of the old days. Hannah noticed the change in him and worried, but he assured her he was fine. "I had a good run, better than most. If my body is slowing down, well, that is just nature taking its course. I am not ready to go yet, but I am not afraid of it either." "Do not talk like that," she said sharply. "I need you here. I am not ready to lose you." He pulled her into his arms, still strong despite his heart's protest. "You are not going to lose me anytime soon. I am too stubborn to leave this world while you are still in it. We made a promise to grow old together, remember?" She did remember, a conversation they had years ago under stars much like these. "Together," she whispered. "That was the promise. And I keep my promises." He did keep that promise for several more years. They celebrated their 30th anniversary in 1909, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Yes, because Thomas and Sarah's oldest daughter had married young and blessed them with twins. The house was full of noise and laughter and love, exactly as it should be. Nathan looked around the table at his family, this dynasty he and Hannah had created, and felt profound satisfaction. Whatever else his life had been or not been, this was enough. This was everything. In the quiet moments, late at night when it was just the two of them, Nathan and Hannah would lie in bed and talk about the years behind them. "Do you ever regret it?" Nathan asked one night. "Not what we have, but how we got here, the tragedy that brought you to my door." Hannah considered the question carefully. "I regret losing my father and brother. I regret the violence and fear of that night, but I do not regret where it led me. If those terrible things had not happened, I would not have found you, would not have this life and this family. So no, I do not regret the path, only that it had to involve such pain. That is a wise way to think about it. I learned from a wise man." She kissed him softly. "Now go to sleep. We have a full house tomorrow with all the grandchildren visiting." "Heaven help us," he said, but he was smiling. Nathan passed away peacefully in his sleep in the winter of 1913, his heart finally giving out after years of faithful service. He was 61 years old. Hannah found him in the morning, still looking peaceful, and though her grief was crushing, she took comfort in knowing he had not suffered. The funeral was enormous, with people coming from all over the territory to pay their respects. Nathan Sawyer had been known not just for his horses, but for his integrity and kindness, for the way he treated everyone from the wealthiest buyer to the newest ranch hand with equal respect. Hannah stood at the grave, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, and spoke the eulogy herself. "Nathan was the best man I ever knew. He took in a stranger and gave her not just shelter but a home. He loved me when I was broken and helped me heal. He built this ranch with his own hands and his own sweat, and he raised his children to be good people. He lived a life of honor and love, and the world is lesser without him in it." She placed a single rose on his coffin, her hand lingering on the polished wood. "Thank you, my love, for everything. I will see you again someday. Wait for me." The grief was hard, harder than she had anticipated despite knowing it was coming. The house felt empty without Nathan's presence, the mornings wrong without his footsteps and voice. But Hannah pushed through, supported by her family and by Clara Morrison, now quite elderly herself but still sharp and kind. "You have to keep going," Clara told her one day a few weeks after the funeral. "For yourself and for your family, Nathan would not want you to give up. I know. It is just so hard. We had 33 years together and it does not feel like enough. It never feels like enough when you truly love someone. But you had 33 good years, Hannah. Many people never get that. Hold on to the memories and keep living. That is how you honor him now." Hannah took the advice to heart. She threw herself into being grandmother and great-grandmother, teaching the youngest generation about their grandfather, making sure Nathan's legacy lived on in the stories she told. Thomas ran the ranch now, with help from his brothers and sisters. The Sawyer Ranch continued to thrive, still producing some of the finest horses in Oregon, now a state rather than a territory. The family Nathan and Hannah had built remained close, gathering for holidays and celebrations, supporting each other through hardships. Hannah lived for 10 more years, watching her family grow and flourish. She saw her youngest daughter Clara return from her travels and settle down with a railroad engineer. She met great-great-grandchildren, tiny beings who carried her blood and Nathan's forward into the future. In the spring of 1923, at the age of 65, Hannah fell ill with pneumonia. Her children gathered around her bed, knowing the end was near. She drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes lost in memories. On her last day, as the sun set through her bedroom window, she opened her eyes and looked at Thomas, her firstborn. "Tell me about the ranch," she whispered. Thomas understood immediately. "It is doing well, Mama. The horses are healthy, the spring foals are strong. The land is green and beautiful. Everything you and Papa built is thriving," she smiled. "Good, that is good. Your father would be proud." "He was always proud, Mama, of all of us, but especially of you." Her eyes drifted closed, then opened again. "I saw him, just now. He was young, the way he looked when we married. He said he has been waiting for me." Sarah, Thomas's wife, gripped Hannah's hand. "Then go to him, Mama. Hannah, we will be all right. You taught us well." Hannah's breathing grew shallower. "I knocked on a door," she whispered, "and found everything. Love, home, family, everything." Those were her last words. She took one more breath, let it out slowly, and was gone. The children wept, but there was comfort in knowing she had lived a full life, had loved deeply and been deeply loved in return. They buried her next to Nathan, their graves side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch. The headstones were simple: Nathan Sawyer, 1852, 1913, beloved husband, father, grandfather. He opened his door to a stranger and found his heart. Hannah Greene Sawyer, 1858-1923, beloved wife, mother, grandmother. She knocked on a door desperate and found everything inside. The Sawyer family continued to gather at those graves for generations, bringing flowers and telling stories, making sure the youngest ones knew the story of how it all began. How a desperate woman knocked on a door and found safety. How a lonely man opened that door and found love. How two broken people built something beautiful together that would last long after they were gone. The ranch remained in the family, passed down through the generations, always called Sawyer Ranch, always raising horses, always honoring the legacy of the couple who had started it all with nothing but determination and love. And on quiet nights when the wind was right, some swore they could see two figures walking hand in hand across the fields, checking on the horses one last time before sunrise, still together even in death as they had been in life, still building there forever in the wild lands of Oregon, still living the promise they had made to each other so long ago on a doorstep stained with blood and desperation that had transformed into something beautiful and eternal and true.